Growing up in Southern California and being near the ocean, I am just so pleased to have Bonnie Sweet and Why We Swim here. Bonnie's a longtime contributor to the New York Times, and originally she wrote American Chinatown, an incredible book, which was a San Francisco Chronicle bestseller that won the 2010 Asian Pacific Award for Literature. Her book, her new book, published by Algonquin in 2020, is Why We Swim, which is what we're here to talk about tonight. It's now out on paperback, and it was a New York Times Book Review Editor's Choice. It was a Time Magazine Must Read Award, and it was also on the NPR Best Book of 2020 list. She's also on the list of the Los Angeles Times and the Boston Globe as a bestseller. She's coming up with the first children's book next month, Sarah and the Big Wave, which we look very much looking forward to. She lives, swims, and surfs in the Bay Area, and you can check out more of her work at bonniesui.com. Welcome, Bonnie.
Hello.
Hi.
Oh, hi, everyone.
And joining her, we are very privileged to have Caitlin Roper, the executive producer of scripted film and television at the New York Times. Caitlin's also an avid swimmer and a triathlete. And just from the few minutes I've got to chat with her, she's just going to bring so much to this talk. So welcome, Caitlin.
Thank you so much, Michael. Happy to be here.
Yay, thanks, Chaucers. Thanks, Michael. And thank you, Caitlin, for being here with me.
And congratulations on your paperback pub day for Why We Swim.
It's pretty weird. Here we are, virtually again, Groundhog Day, but I'm excited.
I am very excited for you. Paperback version of a book means just more people can access it. So that's great. Look at that.
Beachy. Look how good it would look in your hands on the beach.
Oh, this summer on the beach, you got your towel, your bathing suit, and your Why We Swim. I love it. Well, it's just such a privilege to talk to you, Bonnie. You know, I'm a big fan of the book, as you know, and also love swimming. And so it was such a joy to experience this book. And I guess my first question for you that I want to start with was just how did you decide, you love to swim, it's been part of your life for a very long time. How did you decide how to even tackle the subject, this big personal and huge subject, right? In terms of reporting, where did you start?
It's such a good question. It was so hard. It was so hard. And I think taking some time to think about it sort of on the back burner for, years, where I thought, if I ever write another book again, maybe it would be swimming. And then it would just sort of recede into the background. But just to have it be sort of percolating for a while and asking myself every once in a while, because I noticed that stories that I would pitch to our fine publication, the New York Times, would involve swimming or some aspect of going somewhere to swim or some person or some profile. And I thought, okay, so there's something there, but what form could that take? And I started to just kind of collect stories that people would tell me about swimming, whether it was survival stories or just personal things that they had always thought about and kind of knocked about in their heads. And then I realized after I kind of started writing some little bits and pieces that, what is the organizing principle? And I talked to a really smart editor friend of mine, and she said, you've got some great stuff here. Why don't you just call it something as simple as Why We Swim? And then everyone will know what it's about. And it was this boom, and then everything that I had collected just sort of fell into these 5 different categories, 5 different ways of answering that question. And it just really was this eureka moment where it was to embrace the simple, elegant structure and then just kind of use that as the springboard. It just made so much sense. So it's Why We Swim, and then 5 different ways of answering that question. So survival was as the first and most obvious, then well-being, health, community, competition, and flow. And so they all obviously come together, and they're very braided throughout the the arc of the book. But to have that to hang everything on just made such perfect sense. And there's not, when that happens, when it all shakes out in this way that you look at it and you say that makes sense and that feels right, it doesn't happen that often where it feels so right. And so I was just really happy to have had that conversation and have had that. That's what good editors can do, and I just feel really lucky to have fallen upon that.
Yeah, the especially when the shape is elegant, like has some
Yeah.
simplicity to it, and
Yes.
things make sense. But I do know from experience, like sometimes it can be hard, because that elegant shape requires you to leave something, out.
Yeah.
Like, were there storylines that you were just like, this is too good not to include, but I can't, it doesn't fit?
Yes, I found that weirdly enough, this book would, even though I would put a bunch of new stuff into it, it would expand and then it would contract. Like things would just fall out. And so it always wanted to be around this, like, I don't know what it ended up being, like something like 75,000 words or something like that. But it would just, like, even if I would add 10,000 words, it would just, it wants to shake it off.
Mhm.
And that was actually the first time that ever happened to me, where it just was so obvious that no matter what I crammed in, it wanted to be this size and this length and just hold what it held. But there were definitely stories that I thought that I, like, jammed in there. And then I remember my editor at one point was just sort of like, you have a lot of coaches in your book. I can't keep them straight. There's like Coach Helen, Coach Carol, Coach, whoever. And then I was just like, you're right. But I love all my coaches. And she was just like, and she was right. But there were also, there were some swimmers who I interviewed who were early, they had pioneered women's competitive swimming at Cal, so at UC Berkeley, and they were swimming when Cal didn't have a women's swim team. So they would be swimming and they'd be like amazing. They could swim in the Olympics, but they couldn't swim at UC Berkeley. Like, it was just nuts. So that was really cool. I interviewed several women who had had that experience and had swum at Hearst Pool, which is this like beautiful Julia Morgan designed.
That's Berkeley's my hometown. So
yes, I know.
I love
and
that pool.
I know that you're here right here with me. This like marble, black marble rooftop pool in the middle of the UC Berkeley campus with the Campanile right there. And it's like 33 yards long. So it's like this weird length, and it's black marble. So you're swimming. It's like the worst pool to swim in when you're like trying to look for the wall, because you'll break your face. But it's so glorious. Everyone should know that Caitlin and I ran into each other swimming at the Albany pool. I remember that day, like we were just like,
yes.
Caitlin?
Yes.
And so we had a wonderful professional relationship, but also that we ran into each other swimming. And that was like the moment I feel like this all just made sense.
Yeah. And that I took a lesson from Carol Nip, Coach Carol, got a swim coach session in that Albany pool that I still think about every time I swim.
Red lipstick.
No, I've been inspired. I've been influenced.
We're rocking the red lipstick in honor of Coach Carol.
Yes. That actually makes me think about like the Hearst pool, makes me think about like the pools that you've swum in the world that are like memorable. Swimming, obviously not always in a pool, but are there those like special pools to you?
Oh gosh. I mean, I remember there was this one experience I had swimming. I think it was the rooftop pool at the Intercontinental in Hong Kong, maybe. I want to say it was the Intercontinental, because it was like the skyscraper pool, and you were on this roof, and it was just like you would be lying, you would be floating on your back, and you would see, buildings just penciling up around you. And I just remember thinking, this is so quintessentially Hong Kong to like and I love that. Like, even though that was so unexpected, like, you don't really think about swimming in Hong Kong in the same way you would think about swimming in Hawaii or wherever. Somewhere that's more like natural, like environment, natural environment, nature environment. But like, that's the environment, and that's the built environment in Hong Kong. And so it's so of that place. And so I loved, like, that really stands out to me. I remember, of course, like swims in Hawaii and various, like, I mean, swimming from Alcatraz to San Francisco, doing that swim was just, you see the bridge above you.
I've always wanted to do that swim. I haven't yet, but I hope to. Yeah, I want to.
So it's very weird. And of course the currents are just like sucking you in now. But it's so, I'm so glad I did it, because it's so emblazoned in my memory. It's imprinted as like this, again, I love to swim in places to get to know the place in a way that you wouldn't otherwise, right? Like, it's really cool.
Totally.
Wait. I want you to tell your New York triathlon story.
That's the opposite of a nice pool. I will say, like, I once went to a pool in Burbank, California, that I just like found on Google. I was on a work reporting trip there, and it was a really, really long pool, and I had such a memorable swim there. And there was nothing special about it. It wasn't like idyllic in some sort of way, but it was just like big, long, and empty. And I love the Richmond Natatorium in Richmond, California. Just a beautiful the plunge. So good. But this story that you're asking me to tell is a disgusting story, which is that just having swum in the New York City Triathlon in the Hudson River, which is very not clean, we'll just put it that way. I have definitely encountered, I did that race a few times, and I encountered some really disgusting things in the water. And I was telling, when we were chatting earlier, Bonnie, I really think we're going to lose our audience with this anecdote, but I'll just say that, like, I was swimming and like in the middle of the race, and something like touched my face, and I thought it was like a fish, maybe a dead fish, because it's floating. And then I realized through my goggles that it was a diaper. It was like a full wrapped up diaper that was like trash, just floating. And that's like mid race. You're in a race, like you don't really want to be paying attention to things because you're trying to go fast. That's the opposite of the intercontinental.
This is real. We need to be real with everyone about some of the things that happen to you when you're swimming, and maybe when you're swimming in the Hudson.
Yeah. You don't know what you'll find. Well, one of the stories that I loved in Why We Swim was learning about something I had never heard of ever in my life, and I consider myself like very knowledgeable about swimming, but I knew nothing about this, which is samurai swimming. Like, and I like hope you could just like talk to the audience just about like what that is, and also like what it means right now. And I certainly want to like sign up myself for classes.
You and me both. I mean, I wish that. Okay, so let's back up and say that samurai swimming, if you don't know about it, is basically the Japanese swimming martial art. So think about like judo or kendo, but in the water. And so it's called Nihon Eiho, which is the Japanese classical swimming practice. And it started in the feudal period in Japan, where all of the different samurai clans were protecting different parcels of land all around Japan. And like, imagine this on the coast or on like a lake or on a river. And so all of those clans developed their own schools of swimming. And so they had different strokes and techniques to, cut through like a breaking wave. Like if you were to slice through perpendicularly to wave and sight like an approaching enemy, or like if you were in very still water, that you would be able to tread water and not disturb the surface of the water to alert again your enemies that you were coming, and that to be able to then spring out of the water. There's this, I love this move. There's a move called the flying mullet, and it's like you can spring out of the water. You can Google search YouTube, all of this stuff, and you can see all of these techniques where
going to do this immediately upon the end.
I know, yeah, it's just so good. And that you can really throw yourself over into a boat, into like a rowboat. And just like being able to shoot arrows or fight with swords, like treading water. And then the egg beater technique that we think of for synchronized swimming was traced back to these samurai scrolls that go back hundreds of years. So one of the things I was super excited about with this book coming out was when I went to Japan to study and interview all these masters of Nihon Eiho, like what is it, how is it practiced today? And you can take classes. I mean, you could take classes like you would take a class with a judo master. It's so cool. And everyone has caps with different, either stripes or different configurations, like a belt. And it shows that what level you have of proficiency you have attained. And it's like you can swim in formation, and there's different strokes. It's really about the elegance and the efficiency of your stroke and the glide. And it's about so much more than, speed, which is like so much about what swimming as we understand it in a competition is
like
about,
the Olympics.
Right? Yeah, it's just speed. Like it's just how fast you can get from point A to point B many times over, and what I loved about going to find out about this and research this and interview all of these people was that, in the sort of stage setting of the Tokyo Olympics, that they were going to do this demonstration of Nihon Eiho, of exhibition of this Japanese classical swimming techniques to the world and like reintroduce it to the world. And I imagine that they will still be doing this, but I remember finding out about this and I'm thinking, this is so beautiful and so evocative of, because swimming is like the most viewed summer Olympic sport. Yes. People don't follow international swimming except in like during an Olympic year, and then they freaking love it. True. And so I was so excited about this piece of Japanese culture coming out into the world again. And so I think that, everyone keep your eyes peeled for that, in the Tokyo Olympics this summer. Like it will just be so cool to see if that happens. I know that, international spectators aren't allowed, but I was placing bets with myself that I didn't think the Olympics were going to take place this summer. What did you think?
Oh, I didn't think it would. And then I was so thrilled because I'm so excited that we get to see
this so bad.
We need it. But also I was weirded out. Were you like last week when they were like, it's still going to be called the 2020 Olympics?
Yeah. I knew that from
is that because the logos have been printed?
They don't spend so much money. They're still going to call it the 2020.
Right. It's just like, little did they know that year would be associated with a lot of misery,
It's cursed.
Yeah.
We'll hope that they'll break that curse.
Yes, I hope so too. Well, also I would love to see Nihon Eiho demo in the now, but now I'm going to be really disappointed if they don't have that.
All right.
I really need. I'm
going to inquire in my sources, and I'll let you know.
Okay. I want to know. I want to know. But also so much about that was so it makes total sense to me in the Japanese martial arts universe, because so much is about control of your body.
Yes.
But I think a lot of people, especially if they aren't comfortable swimming, don't think of the ability to breathe and have physical control, to maintain a position in the water.
Yeah.
Because people are so used to, especially in a out of anxiety, moving quickly to keep their head above water or their body afloat, or so it's so counter to those kinds of instincts.
Slow. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. And I think that also another part of it is the philosophical sort of spiritual practice of whole personhood, and that, resuscitation means there's different character traits that are attributed or associated with different skills, and that made sense to me in this really beautiful way of to be able to do these different things meant that you had mastered something in yourself, or strengthened something in yourself, right? I just love that whole idea, because that's what we think about with martial arts, on land, that it is about building character and building a steadfastness that that's a dedication. And so I think with swimming, there's this added element of danger too, that I think is, to be able to understand your response to it and to overcome that. I think that that's something that I talk about a lot in the book. which is about survival, but survival in many different forms.
But actually it's tied to like the basic advice that you get about being towed out in undertow, like the same concepts apply, which is like you actually don't want to waste your energy fighting against a current. You want to track parallel to the ocean, but it's about like minimal, it's like breathing and calmness to retain energy. I mean, I think there's something, a lot of people who aren't swimmers are very anxious about swimming. And I've come to learn, as someone who loves to swim, like for me, like in a triathlon, like the swim is the best part by far, but everyone at the start of a triathlon is very anxious. Usually the swimming tends to be like, they tend to be runners and cyclists. Their best sport is not the swimming. They want to get through it and move on. And I'm like, oh, I wish I could stay in the water a lot longer, but I've come that, the New York City Triathlon even one year had a bunch of therapists at the start, like live therapists. So it's like 4:45 in the morning, waiting for your time to start, and there's like therapists talking to people. Like from my point of view,
what would they tell you?
I don't know. I didn't talk to them. I just thought like, isn't it kind of too late at this point? Like if you're really anxious at the start of the race, I'm not sure. Maybe not. Maybe they're really helpful. But I think like there's a lot of comfort in the water for people who are really experienced with swimming, and a lot of anxiety for people who aren't. Even just in the
That's absolutely true. And I will also say that I have this very specific memory of swimming in my first triathlon, where at the start, people are so frenzied and they're like swimming on top of you.
Yes,
and I thought actually that I was going to drown.
Yes.
Like there were these guys like swimming, and I didn't expect that. And I think that was something that I would have liked a therapist at the start to tell me that was going to happen, that if I was out there, that I was going to be like
trampled over, but in the water. Yes. I remember the first time that happened to me too. And I was like, these monsters, like I want to stop and be like, you jerk. But you're like in the middle of
I really did. I mean, that is like a very strong memory that I have, that I thought I was gonna die. And like that, like I guess that, and at that point, of course, like I thought that the swim was gonna be a piece of cake, and it was not, because of that. Like
and that is when people die in triathlons. Like it's not that more
really
people.
Wait, that's a real okay.
But the reason that they die is not because people swim on top of them. It's that if you have a cardiac event or a health, a breathing issue, or something happens in your body and you're on the bike, you keel over and the ambulance comes to get you because everybody sees that you fell over.
All right, we don't want to discourage people.
No. Okay. Yes, swimming is wonderful. It's quite safe.
You won't die.
Let me just, we're like, no, I do want to ask you a couple questions that are like personally from my point of view about like swimming. Like, for you, does swimming like quiet your mind? Like I think it was in the flow chapter, but when you're talking about like kind of processing information, letting kind of silly things come through your mind, because I really relate to that. Like for me, the swimming, like I can work out something, I can memorize something or figure something out, or just kind of like zone out. But I wonder how you would answer that question. Like, how does your mind work when you're swimming?
I think it depends whether I'm in a pool or swimming in some open water where I have to be paying attention to that at least more than I would in a pool. In a pool, I'm totally on autopilot. Like I just, which I think is very liberating. Like I totally just know that your body knows how many strokes you have to take before you do your turn, and so I think after the first, like 10 laps or so, then I start loosening up, and then my mind starts going wherever it will go. And I did notice this when I was writing the book, that I wanted to pay attention to what I was thinking about, because again, like wasn't something that I thought about until I was trying to interrogate that for myself for the book. And where do our minds go? And so I found that when I was swimming in a pool, there was much more freedom to roam around, because my body was doing the thing, and it freed me up because it was meditative. It was just like this repetition. And some people, of course, talk about like the black line. It just like at the bottom of the pool is just like really, it's super boring. But once you kind of push past, I mean, there's a certain distance that you obviously have to like warm up. It's different for everyone. But like, I would say like once I get past like 10, 12 16 laps or something and then get past into the first 500, then I'm just sort of, I'm fine. Like I feel good, just kind of to keep going. And I feel free to roam around, like just to think about whatever. Like, I mean, I've thought about, so, I mean, when I was writing this book, I thought about how my kids didn't want me to leave in the morning, or they didn't want to go to school, or they, and I worried about that, or I worried about like some piece of writing that I was working on, or I worried about, you know, a friend or a family member. And then after, and you know, and then I would solve things too. I would say, okay, I'm going to do this, like, and then it would just kind of then tie off and then float away, and then I would have that solution. Or I would worry about this thing that I was writing, and then something would occur to me, and then I would be like, oh, and then that would just also tie off and float away. So I would just have something that at the end I could just collect all the balloons that I had, you know, like just figured out. And it's not like every time that happened, but it happened enough that I realized, oh, this is the place where I go to work that stuff out. But I feel like when I'm swimming in open water, and I know you will understand this too, it's like it's a different, you're attentive to the environment in a different way. But that's also like liberating, because it's like presentness. It's this constant, then you don't have time to worry about all the stuff. Actually,
your mind is full on task. Yeah.
And I think that's helpful, and it's in a different way.
I totally relate to that. I feel like I can resolve things when I'm swimming. And I also like something I mentioned to you before is like, for me, like all forms of like endurance sports can be therapeutic in some way, but swimming is the only one that I'm like always in the mood for. Or even if I'm not in the mood, the pool is cold, or, you know, I'm cranky or whatever. I feel like once I'm in it, it's like a physical change in sensation, which is kind of like a sensual pleasure, like on my skin. Like, you know, I don't feel that way about running in the first mile or two. Eventually I could get to a place where I'm like, this is okay. But I'm not like immediately immersed and feeling like, ooh, this feels good. Like even before I'm swimming. And I feel like that there's something in that too. And the transportation of mediums, like you're in the air and then you're in the water. I wonder if that, you know,
there's the contrast between like, it's a new thing, or not new, but it is the immediate contrast to what we exist in the rest of our lives. So like everyone knows that feeling of plunging into water. You like jump in and it's just this like, and then you're like, you know, like it's different, and it's everything in your body is telling you that. And that is like this relief, and then you kind of like float up, and it just feels good. Like, and we talked about this a little bit earlier, where like the water is like the pressure on your body is a massage. It does feel good. All of your cells are, you know, your skin cells are kind of responding to that. And because we don't feel that otherwise. We don't get to have that sensation unless we're taking a bath, but like we're not usually like fully submerged like that, and in such a great big body of water. And again, like I always think about like babies and kids, like how joyous and wonderful it is to feel the like resistance of this magical, weird, you know, thing that you're suddenly in. You get to play with it, and it splashes, and then you can kind of get under it, but it pushes you up. And so what is this thing? Like it is, you know, it's an alien and wondrous place. Like I think that never goes away.
It's funny that when you were describing that, I was thinking of the parts in Moana, the movie Moana, where like Moana is like playing, like the water is sort of sentient and responding to her because she has like some connection to it, but how like it's really playful, you know, it's kind of silly and funny. So as a character in that movie, water is funny, but it is.
You also made me just think of that movie, The Abyss.
Yes,
different vibe in Moana. That like, I'm playing with you, I'm sentient.
Yes.
And it was very similar, where it has like it has something of its own that reminds you like, oh, it's alien to you, but wants to play with you, you know? Like
that's I don't know why I just thought of this now, but like the thing you were talking about in samurai swimming of like the move to jump onto a boat. The only
Yeah.
time I've ever done that, like shot out of water onto a boat, like because I really physically cannot do that. I have to heft myself to the side, is that one time where I like went too deep in the ocean and the water got suddenly very cold and I started
Yeah.
thinking about what was below. Like I jumped off a boat or something and I just shot out of fear and anxiety, like shot back onto the boat and then was like, wow, I'm standing on the boat. Like, how did I get up here? Very much not a,
That's amazing.
a skill, like a samurai
You
skill.
are a native flying mullet.
That's the thing. I think it was a fear motivated flying mullet, so I don't think it qualifies in the same way. But no, I do think there is something kind of scary, but also it's kind of humorous and playful about
Yeah.
water, as an entity, which is like a funny thing to say about a medium.
Or it teases out those feelings, right?
Yeah.
It makes you playful, but also makes you fearful. And it's like, what else can like give you that range of emotion about? I don't know. I think it's cool to talk about it that way and to think about it, because there is that.
Yeah. No, I've never really thought about the question of like the water playing with you other than like a cartoonish sort of embodiment of that, but it's true. It does, like you're right though, that you respond that way. Like even like a kid, you kind of like want to splash it. Do kind of like do a flip,
Yeah.
Like as a grown woman, like I don't go do a somersault unless I'm like provoked by my children. But
the
like
water makes you want to do it.
Yeah.
And you do. And
like a handstand or something. Right.
Yeah.
Like there is something, and maybe that's a connection to childhood also, but there's something playful in that. How, speaking of kids though, how about Felix and Teddy, your sons? Like, are they continuing on your course on a swim team? Like, do they
well, we decided that we would have them become proficient enough at swimming so that they would just never question that they were able to do that, right? So like how far does that go in swim team? I'm not sure. They're not there yet because they're only 8 and 10, but I see it happening and they just love to be in it. They might not be like swim team people for forever the way I was, but I like every day that we're in the water or that I see them in the water, it's just like we're visiting my in-laws now and there's a pool and my sister-in-law just says they're such water babies. Like they're such, they just want to be in there. And so Teddy today was just, he was just sort of like floating around and then like floating on his back. I mean, he didn't have anyone. It wasn't like he was playing with Felix or he wasn't doing anything except just kind of like feeding and like this like weird like little jellyfish floating around. And to me, when I see that, it's hilarious because he's just sort of like in his own, like in outer space, but in the water. It's that he is comfortable enough again to have that like roaming, floating, meditative thing at that age, and I think that's great.
And that's probably not the energy he has all the time on land, right?
Yeah, like totally. And how wonderful that he has that, and feels comfortable enough to relax in that way in the water. I think again, like when you are anxious and fearful, that's not what it is for you. It's this tension. And if you learn enough to be safe and comfortable in the water, it can be liberating for you. So that's what I want for everyone, really.
No, I mean, I definitely think like I've over the years have like talked to friends about just like the reason this is stressful for you is because your legs are falling, down as you're not. And if you can just get to like a good parallel position, you won't always feel like you're drowning with your body like pulling down. Because I feel like there's a basic minimum. You don't have to be a good swimmer. You don't have to perfect a stroke, but you have to basically feel like you're not in a desperate situation. And it's not that hard to get there. But,
you just have to understand how your body reacts in water. Like I mean, like the other day I was saying to Teddy, float on your back and notice, right? It's about noticing like how when you inflate your lungs, you float to the top. And if you blow all your air out, you just start to sink.
Mhm,
And
mhm.
just like that, like that was what I taught the kids in like
Yeah.
beginning swim lessons, right? Just to
Yes.
notice what is happening with your body, and everyone can do that. And if you
Yeah.
can, then you can trust that you know the physics of it and you know what to do.
Yeah.
And that is the first step, I think, to feeling at home in the water.
Yeah. Yeah. What you know, I guess like one of the questions I had from reading the book also for anyone who has already read it is just for an update on Kim Masters, because
Oh,
like
Kim Chambers, yeah.
yes, Kim Chambers, sorry. That you get to a place of like really really rooting for her. And
Yeah.
it's, you know, you leave the book at a place like in that postscript where you're wondering if how swimming is working for her, how her body is doing, and how her health is.
I'm always so glad when people ask, because it means that they care. Like, it means that the story was told in a way that they care about her.
Yeah.
And
And maybe we should say, for anyone who's watching who hasn't read the book yet and is buying it today in paperback,
today,
yeah,
right now.
just
Kim
like
Chambers is
yes.
She is a character in the book about well-being and health, where she is the first woman to swim from the Farallones to San Francisco. And she's
Farallones are really sharky. I just want to say to anyone
really sharky, really far away,
far
miles.
Can't see them, very very far off most of the
away
time.
from San Francisco. The water is cold, the currents are strong, the waters are also full of sharks. But that she was able to do that after almost losing her leg to amputation after an accident that she had. And she actually started swimming to rehab her leg and kind of learn to walk again. And she discovered open water swimming in the Dolphin Club and South End Run Club in San Francisco in the process, and really rehabbed her life that way. And so she achieved all of these things, did all these amazing swims, and then over the course of when I was reporting the book, she had a bout of Guillain-Barré, which is this autoimmune disease in which you have this like steady paralysis that happens until you need emergency treatment to not die, basically. And so she got to the hospital and was able to get treatment before it paralyzed her lungs, basically. And then she recovered from that and started swimming again, and then had another bout of it, but then recovered. And so she's been swimming and staying healthy through the pandemic, just like other dolphin clubbers and South Enders. So I've been in touch with her this whole time, and she's always really glad to receive the well wishes. And so I'm just happy to report that she's doing really well. And she has her own book that I think she just finished, and so you should be hearing from her pretty soon.
Awesome. Yeah, I can't that's it. I'm excited for that book, but I'm so glad to hear that she's doing okay, and I actually like, it's funny, this time in quarantine, it would be very nice if I was still living in San Francisco to be able to do open water swimming, because it's something that's like, quote, COVID safe, and I guess like for a lot of people that I know who mostly pool swim, this time has been really hard because a lot of pools have been closed. And I don't know, like, not that you're like the national oracle on the status of all swimming across the United States, but like, what is your sense of like the way quarantine has affected swimming?
I mean, people who were just dedicated pool swimmers and always pool swimmers couldn't swim. And so a lot of people turn to open waters around them. So whether it's a lake or a bay or the ocean, and I know at least dozens of people in the Bay Area who just people who were never open water swimmers, who were diehard pool swimmers, and they did this, and they were scared of it. They were scared of the things that were in the water, or seaweed, or sharks, or other fish, or
coldness is a big one.
Coldness too. And they did it, and people also discovered that they liked it even more. I mean, I know someone who she was like kind of she was a pool swimmer, but didn't love pool swimming, but was also nervous about bay swimming, and ended up loving bay swimming even more, like just to be out in the wildness and to
Yeah.
see, the currents pulling and the, sun rising or setting, and
Yeah.
like the boats and the animals going by, like
Yeah.
that was resonant and rewarding in a way that swimming in the pool wasn't actually.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I get that when I go surfing. So I always feel like when I go surfing, I get that wonderful experience of being a part of that whole waterscape and part of
Mhm.
the world in a way that I don't feel when I'm in a pool. But I love swimming in a pool. Like I love pools. So I get the hit of each of those things, in the way that we describe, like, where is my brain going and where's my mind going and what am I thinking about in those different experiences. But like, I think people who love open water swimming, they are searching for a particular kind of thing. People who really, really feel comfortable with pool swimming, they want to feel that they can give themselves over to that space and feel safe and not have to worry. So I think it just depends. But I do find that that people, that the idea that people push past what they were scared of, and found buddies and went swimming, and that and then felt so proud of themselves for achieving that, and to keep doing it too. Like I think that is just so wonderful. I mean, I think that's its own reward to hear that from people, to tell me that.
It suddenly dawns on me, right, that you'd be a magnet, that probably even strangers on social media would like tell you their swimming stories, their status of their, of course you've written this book, like this is it, Bonnie, you're gonna
I love hearing them. I mean, my husband always when I'll get a letter from someone, he'll say, I find it so interesting that people write to you and tell you about their lives, and I say, I love it, like keep it coming, I just love that so much.
That's because of the connection you made with them over this thing. What do you swim every day? Do you what is your swim, like you're describing, like how do you fit in pool swim, swim team,
right? And
surfing?
now it's constantly evolving, right? So it just depends on, can I get a lane at the pool? Like, can I get a lane reservation? Or now that masters swimming, Coach Carroll has managed to get like certain slots at the pool now where we master swimmers who are members can, sign up for certain slots, like in the lanes. And so there's more availability for me in a pool setting. But again, like when all the pools were completely shut, I was either surfing at First Light or going down to Keller Beach in Richmond and swimming in San Francisco Bay, at 9 o'clock in the morning or something. I didn't care about the tides. I just was like, I need my fix. I will put that on my calendar as the thing that I'm doing. And
would you swim by yourself at Point Keller?
I would. I mean, I think it's because I was like, it was a pretty known quantity to me where you could swim out to this particular point and come back, and that's a mile. And you could swim further than that if you wanted, but then you could time the tides, and there are people who swim to the pier, but I'm just like, I don't need to swim that long. I'm fine swimming for 45 minutes, against the tide one way and then riding it back. But that was like I love to have the routine. I love to have it be built in to, so I don't have to expend energy thinking about it, so that I can just go and enjoy it and come back. It's really, and now that the pool is more accessible to me, I'm kind of like folding that back in. But I am really curious about how, the summer is going to look, because at least in California, things are looking up, and things are opening, at a pretty steady clip, and with like, various coronavirus stuff like being pretty low, and vaccinations being high, and so that's really great news on that end. But it's just watching and waiting, and then also like, so the thing that I've learned is just I can roll with it more by the practice of swimming. I
Yeah.
can
I mean, you can deal with the ups and downs of
I
it.
can
and
deal with,
stress.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And I feel really lucky about that.
Yeah.
So I also wanted to leave room for anyone
Yeah.
who wanted to ask any questions. I mean, this time has sped by because I could talk to you forever, as you know. But if there's any
Same.
questions, we'll just keep talking
Yeah.
unless people throw questions in the Q&A. But
Yeah, I'll watch the Q&A. So if anyone does want to ask a question, please put a question in there. And then why don't you tell us like something you learned in reporting the book, just like for anyone who hasn't, like something like I learned about samurai swimmers from you, but like, is there something you learned that you didn't know that was exciting to you?
I learned about how our brains respond to water. So like the whole thing about when we hear water or see it, or just, we're just really drawn to it. We know that our brain activity changes, like alpha waves. Like alpha waves are the ones that are associated with calm and relaxation and creativity. It's just like a state of mind that is quite beneficial, quite attractive.
And don't you feel like you knew that, but like this is science telling you that it's actually
somebody
true?
measured that. That's awesome. Now I know, and I can just tell you, and now you will tell everyone else, and everyone will, it's like this. Totally. I think I love that. Or that.
And you said in the book that like, even if you have like, if you're in a hospital, like, and you have an ocean scene versus painted on the wall versus like a forest scene, you're more relaxed in the ocean scene, which I
patients like have better outcomes, like looking at ocean scenes. Like there's just something about that does something to our brains. Like we know, or we respond to that visual. That's beyond our control. It's just like where we are as a species.
It's not conscious. We do have a question from someone. We slightly talked about this, but what are your favorite places to swim, Bonnie?
I love swimming in different places in Hawaii. Tunnels Beach is a place that I mentioned. It's on the North Shore of Kauai that is special to me. You can swim in this like enclosed reef on the beach. It's very protected, and you can see all kind, like so much marine life. Sharks too, but like they're not gonna bite you, they're juveniles. But it's just like this turtles just floating up, the cleaner wrasse like cleaning the turtle. It's just so cool. And again, to be a part of things, like in the same way that I was describing with like in Hong Kong. I love that.
Right, whether it's tall skyscrapers on the pool at the top of the Intercontinental, or the reef sharks and the reefs. Anyway. Listen, you brought up the sharks, Bonnie, so I don't want to be blamed.
I did.
But another question is just, do you still surf? Which the answer is yes, I know that part, but where do you like to go to surf?
I either like to go to Ocean Beach in San Francisco or to Pacifica. And I go really early. Like I go in the dark so that I can get some time in when it's quiet and the light is just starting. And I mean, so many people have kind of taken up the habit. Most people don't go right in the dark like that, but I have my little posse, and it's really fun. It's lovely.
Yeah, that's nice. We don't have more questions in here. Does anyone else watching have another question for Bonnie?
A few minutes left.
We have another one. Why do you think that women made great strides early on in swimming relative to women's progress in other sports?
Oh, interesting. That's an interesting question. I mean, I don't know if you mean by like recognition of ability. I mean, certainly I think about Gertrude Ederle, being the first woman to swim the English Channel, and then also crushing the previous men's record by 2 hours. I mean, that was, I think, like 1926. I mean, is that what you mean? I if you mean that, yes, absolutely. But I also think with swimming, I talked about this a little bit earlier today in another event where someone asked about like, did did I think that women were better suited to swim or like some endurance events, or or somehow better suited like to be in the water? And there is some anecdotal evidence for, like, for example, Lynn Cox is like
Mm.
one of the most extraordinary swimmers ever, and she swims in great distances, very cold water, open water, and she's also submitted to various like
Right.
scientific
Poking
experiments.
and prodding. Hmm.
Yeah, to for the betterment of medical science, where like studying hypothermia or studying blood flow in her body, where like but she has like a particular body composition of fat where she's neutrally buoyant in salt water. So she's like has expend minimal energy swimming in the ocean because
Yeah.
she's perfectly positioned to like really cruise. She also has like incredible endurance, and just can keep going and going and going. And she was that when she was a kid. So
Yeah.
like I don't know what that means in terms of like was her body composition similar
Mhm.
as a kid? Like I don't know. Like I mean, there's so many variables, but the fact
Especially
that
because endurance is also psychological. And I would say, like,
yes,
not to get into, I am not a scientist. I don't want to speak for science on this, but the question of
yeah,
like the mental endurance that is
yeah,
required, which I think, could be men or women with that mental
yeah.
endurance, but like that seems a big part of that
Also
question of
pain
like,
tolerance.
yes.
Yeah, pain tolerance is a huge thing, and that's also come up with women in various like sort of early studies, but not definitively. But like there is the question of like in endurance sports, can women sort of like close the gap that like in a very like short sprint event that
Mhm.
like men seem to be more dominant. Like it's
Mhm.
super interesting. Jury is out. I do think that women excel in swimming, especially marathon swimming. It is absolutely true.
Yeah. That's true. Well, is there anything you want to talk about before we go? Because we only have a few more minutes, and that was our
Um,
last question.
I don't think so. I just want to say thank you. It's just been so nice to, what a weird year this has been. And I have been so pleased with um, and grateful for the readers, for the book, and for you for being here with me, for Michael for hosting us.
My
I just
pleasure.
want to express like in this like year in, thank you. Like I
Well,
really,
thank you for writing a book that is an escape and a solace for so many in this hard time too.
thank you.
Well, I have one more question from Sally Singer, if you don't mind.
Of
And she
course.
says, thanks for this presentation. I loved your book. I teach swimming for conditioning at Santa Barbara City College at Los Baños Pool and have a lot of community members in my class, especially now. Some people hesitate to join because they're older, quote unquote. Can you address the idea of swimming for life and how swimming is great for older people?
Absolutely. Swimming is one of those rare sports that you can practice far, far, far into your later years, 90s and above. I remember when I was a kid, at my local pool, there was this guy he looked like he was, he looked like he was 65. He was 99 years old. He had been swimming and
Oh,
competing. He had shaved head. He was just like cruise in the water. And I just remember finding out all about him. He was like this legend. And he just was so youthful and so, had this like the way he moved was of a much younger person. And, in the book, I write a lot about longevity in swimming and interview these longevity scientists who talk about swimming as a thing that is just, again, one of those things you can do into your much, much later life with no real diminishment of your ability to keep going and to keep doing those things. And there's so many reasons for doing that. So I encourage you absolutely to keep going, keep pursuing that, because it will be something that is a lifelong practice for you.
And also, I just want to add, one of the nice things about public pools is there are always a huge span of ages of people rock
Yes.
swimming. So it's also a
Yes.
welcoming place.
Mhm.
And I'm sure that this teacher, Sally, who asked this question, knows this very well. But like, that's always a joy for me, you know, the age range in the locker room, the age range in the pool, and how welcoming it is for people
And
of all
that's not
ages.
something you see in other
No.
places or locker rooms other than the community pool. Like, I absolutely love that so much. And yeah, I'm going to be that person.
Me too. Me too. High five to that.
Well, Caitlin, thank you for being a great host. You were amazing.
Thank you.
Bonnie, again, thank you. And I promised I didn't do a Zoom bomber on you or anything like that. So I have to tell the audience that Bonnie was my resident Zoom bomber for National Book Award winner, Charles Yu, because he used her book, American Chinatown, as influence for a National Book Award. And I thought it was perfectly appropriate that she dropped in, and it was a wonderful event. So you're the best Zoom bomber ever. Yeah,
I love it.
I
love Charlie. I actually know Charlie too. So that's.
Oh, you do?
Oh, right, because you worked with Charlie for
on the
Decameron project, right?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Amazing.
He called us the mafia, and everybody knows the mafia doesn't
What is there,
exist.
a California mafia here?
I think we are confirming that.
Yeah.
Well, thank you both. And Bonnie, best of luck with the paperback. Please buy it, chaucersbooks.com. Why We Swim, Algonquin Books. Thank you very much, everyone, and have a nice evening. Good night.
Good night.
Yeah.